Hello, patrons. I hope you're well. Welcome to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions only for patrons this week. But I must start with an apology because this stream was set up last night, and much to my rage and much of my time over the last hour of today, all the questions that were submitted last night I can't find. So I am really, really sorry. There is nothing more frustrating from a creator's perspective. I can do shit content. People hate my content. That's fine. There's nothing more frustrating than offering something to people and then not being able to fulfill it. So I'm extremely sorry if you submitted a question prior to around about 10 a.m. this morning. Try as I might, I cannot find any of these questions. I know there were a lot submitted because I checked when I left this office at some stupid o'clock last night. So I'm really, really sorry. I can't cover what I can't say, unfortunately. For those who did, I'm sorry and thank you. And for those who have got questions submitted since, I thank you very much. If you're watching along in the chat live now, please feel free to throw in as many questions as you want, because this stream now unfortunately isn't probably going to be as long as I'd hoped that it would be. I will continue this stream until I've covered every question that I can see. So apologies, guys. To timestamp this, it's coming up to around about 10 past 11 UK time on the morning of Thursday, November the 13th. I'm 1 month away from being 42. This morning I feel older. I've got nothing particular to announce, so I will get into these questions that I can see. For those who submitted, and obviously I can't see the questions, please feel free to DM me. I will answer them there by all means. Or on socials, Twitter, whatever. Sorry, I'm really frustrated this morning. Cole Slipher is first. Says, hi, James. Hope you're well. I've got Haaland and Salah, and the plan was always to captain Salah this game week. I'm starting to get cold feet. Would you captain Salah? Yes. Yes is my answer, mate. I think most of us want doesn't mean we will want to take Haaland on in game week 12. Newcastle away is the sort of fixture that really makes us want to and should look elsewhere. I think for me personally, I probably don't have, unless I change my mind in the next week, anything strong enough to go with against. And as discussed on last night's Clash to Correspondence, the only player that I would feel truly comfortable going, yep, if I've got him, he's getting the armband, is Mo. Yeah, I'd go with it, mate. It might not be in the right outcome in the end, but I think ultimately if you've kept Mo Salah through this period and now you've arrived at Nottingham Forest at home and not doing it, that doesn't mean you should sell. Obviously selling this week in this circumstance would be bonkers, and you don't need to captain him. But I'm sure this was part of the philosophy that you wanted to go with. I would proceed. Cole says, how do you think Man City might line up against Newcastle? Marmoush and Haaland combination undid our defence at the Etihad last season. Do you think Marmoush starts? I think there's every chance that it will just be the same Manchester City team that beat Liverpool. I think consistency at the moment till they hit easier fixtures, which is only around the corner, is probably what Pep will be looking for. I see no reason really why he would tear that up. I don't foresee that he would put Marmoush in for anybody, truthfully. I take on board what you say about, I think he scored a hat-trick in the game last year, did he? At the Etihad. But it was at the Etihad. We're at very different stages. Very importantly, Manchester City are playing a different system now to what they were playing when they played Newcastle. I want to say sort of February time, I think it was. So, no, I would be surprised if Marmoush started. Cole says, as it's international break, who would be your best England 11 from players you've seen? I think mine would have Gazza, Robson ahead of the likes of Gerrard, Lampard and Scholes. I didn't see a lot of Brian Robson. I saw the tail end of his career, so it wouldn't be right for me to put him in. My dad couldn't stand him, so there's possibly a little bit of influence in that. The Captain Marvel stuff. I think my dad had a bit of a chip on his shoulder because Robson used to play so much instead of Hoddle. And that used to piss him off. So I don't think my dad would put Brian Robson in that team. For me, I'd say truthfully, it would be a lot of the team probably off the top of my head from around about 0406. So I'm going to pick a goalkeeper that's not from that era. It's one of two, isn't it? It's David Seaman or Jordan Pickford. I think there's every case to make that Jordan Pickford has now done better for England than David Seaman did. I would probably go David Seaman. Right back, It's probably Gary Neville or Kyle Walker, isn't it? I'd probably go Gary Neville, I think, just about. Left back, Ashley Cole, comfortable decision. Centre back, there's a lot to choose from there. A lot. I would think actually, again, kind of lean back to sort of the 06 partnership. John Terry, Rio Ferdinand, I think probably. Midfield, I think Gerrard goes in there, doesn't he? I think many will know a big soft spot for Paul Scholes, but for England, it's got to be Gerrard, isn't it? Gerrard's as your 8, Beckham on the right, I suppose it's got to be, isn't it? Rooney ahead of Gerrard, Kane as the 9. And then it's holding midfield and left wing. Left wing's problematic, isn't it? It's possibly a case for even Raheem Sterling left wing, maybe. I feel like for 30 odd years of supporting England, I don't feel anyone's truly ever really kind of locked that down, I don't think. I'm gonna maybe say maybe Raheem Sterling. Actually, I mean, he was our best player at the last Euros. Holding midfield. Tough that. I'm quite tempted to say, even though it's not natural, I'm actually tempted to say Declan Rice. Has often played a deeper role for England. He's not playing it at the moment, but I'm quite tempted to say him. I'm thinking through the 90s, I think there's Paul Ince. Through the noughties, we tried to shoehorn people in so much. We were better set when we had Owen Hargreaves or Michael Carrick playing. Particularly Michael Carrick, actually, because he proper sat. Owen Hargreaves was a really good presser. I'm tempted actually to say Declan Rice, I think. It's not inspiring, is it? Diljeet07 says, good morning, James. Similar to Suj, have decided on free hit 13. When would you recommend wildcarding before first window closes? Currently have double Arsenal defence, Semenyo, Bruno Fernandes, Saka, Dewsbury Hall, Sarr, Haaland, Pedro. I'd still be very tempted to go game with 14, mate. Personally. I think Chelsea there with João Pedro. I think that's a headache waiting to happen game with 14. You can, of course, sell him. Sarr will go to AFCON. That's the only player from your attacking players there you've got going there. Don't worry too much about the Arsenal defence. There is a relevance of other players that you potentially have as well in terms of your goalkeeper defenders. The problem is, as I've said so many times over, the teams with the good fixtures, once you hit 13, don't change much till the end of the season. So, it's personal preference, mate. You could pick any week. There's a case for 16, I think, in the sense that's right. Okay, Sarr's going. Man City, you've got the Leeds, Fulham, Sunderland schedule out of the way, but then they've still got West Ham at home in Sunderland. It never changes enough. You can see that on my rolling difficulty, and I will be updating the difficulty of the teams this week or early next week. It might have to be now. There isn't enough weeks of change. You go to game week 18, it's top my ticket, Everton. Yay, great. And Dyer and Idrissa Gana Gay at AFCON. Right, shit, isn't it? It never changes enough, mate. So it's almost, right, I've got enough things I want to change now. Get on with it. Deal with it. Dewsbury Hall, for example, might be great for you 18 onwards. I don't think I'll be using him much between now and then. So it's why I've never liked the idea of much beyond game week 13, because there is obviously a clear swing there, obviously particularly for Manchester City. Newcastle doesn't feel quite so strong at the moment. United at Palace doesn't feel so strong. So I get the free hit 13. Honestly, I'd probably still go game week 14, mate. George Picrablo says, hello, James. Would you prefer to own Saka or Bruno for the next 2 games? Kind of feels like a big emphasis on game week 12, doesn't it? So I'm going to say Bruno Fernandes. Bruno's 13 is a little bit better than Saka's. You've got Saka in the duel against Cucurella. There's not many get much out of him in 13. So slight preference for Bruno in the sense I think the fixtures are possibly a little less relevant to him. And I think for Saka to be the better of the two, you probably are looking for the haul against Tottenham, which he is capable of. But probably Bruno. I don't think at this moment in time I would go Bruno to Saka if I had the money in the bank. I'd leave it at this moment in time and revisit. And then Bruno, the longer it goes with Bruno, the more difficult he gets to sell. Bumo leaving, fixtures improving. James Russell says, good morning, James. Have you given any thought to using it after the AFCON transfers? I've had a good start to the season and have wildcard and free hit left. Yeah, I like my team and feels forced to use it now. I presume that's the wild card. Have I? Yes. But almost as reasons just explained. I've got enough crap that I want to change, James. So in your situation, you're saying you're happy with your team. You're happy with the team. Don't do it, mate. Wait, because just purely on you might land in 4 weeks and not be happy with the team. Go, right, okay, I do want to chop it up. So if you're happy, like, don't use it for everyone said 13. Like, if you're happy with your team, keep it. For me, all the bits on the edges I want to change. There are players that I don't own that I want to get, the likes of Bumo, Mateta, which don't really work for me right now. I can go Bowen to Mateta, but as I explained for advanced tier patrons on a midweek dilemma, and I hinted at it towards the end of the Clash of Correspondence last night, the role of the transfer actually is probably better. We don't know what we get from Wolves in game week 12 as well. Now Rob Edwards has been appointed. Can't even be sure if it's back 3, back 4. Will it matter? Palace are much better. I don't know. But it might make Oliver Glasner's task of preparing for that game a little bit more difficult, and they might actually take a more defensive standpoint than ordinarily you'd expect in a fixture like that, to wait and see what Wolves do. That's a possibility. So circumstantial as always in terms of team dependent. Have I looked at it? Yes. Do I think that there would be much different if I wildcard around about 17, 18 or 16 than what I would be doing in 13? No, I don't think there will be, particularly. But yes, I've thought about it, particularly 16, in the sense of like coming back to Brentford is one idea behind that. Fulham's fixtures also look better for 16. It's like scraping the barrel, mate. So for me, like all around the edges in terms of my kind of substitutes and crap players are terrible. I want to change the structure a little bit. I detailed that in the midweek dilemma. The idea of now almost picking like 12 players and having 2 selection headaches every week running into Christmas to cover off rotation and stuff like that. And some punty players, which may include some Man City players. So have I thought about it, James? Yes, I've thought about it, but it's going to be 13 for me, mate. James continues with saying his squad for 13 without wildcard would be Raya, Dubravka. Yeah, it's again Dubravka on the edge, fine. Gabriel, VVD, Lacroix, Senesi, Esteve. So, James, I might be going with 4 of them on my wildcard. Saka, Bruno, Shabosh, Lysar, and Dyer. It's fine. Haaland, Thiago, Krupi. Yeah, it's fine, mate. Yeah, for you, it's probably looking at things like Mateta. Do I think that one player is worth it to wildcard? No. You'd be downgrading maybe one of Saka or Bruno to make that happen. But your structure is in a front 2. You're probably quite happy with that. It's probably that, James. When do you want to change the structure to a front 3? Now, for example, I mentioned 16 about Brentford coming into good fixtures. You've already got Thiago. At that point, Mateta's still got Man City. So you're like, okay, after that. So maybe for you, you're looking at maybe more like game week 17, for example. And Palace go to Leeds. I mean, it's shocking, really, isn't it? We mentioned like Brentford, Fulham, Palace as like potential reasons and points to like wild card. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't change much. But I think, yeah, you're better set than me at the moment, James. Reality. Covered in a 3-5-2 setup, one cover of sub every week, or 4-4-2 setup. You're in a much stronger position than me, James. So, no, you're fine, mate. JB says, have you ever considered another content hosting platform for these streams that doesn't delete your prep questions? Smash the like and subscribe. Much love. No, I hadn't, but I might now. So I don't know what happened. I don't know, but there's probably a lesson in setting it up yesterday and not wanting to do that ever again. So I'll probably just, if I do this again, it's just I'll set it up first thing in the morning and you've got a bit more time. But yeah, I thought it would be nice for those who wouldn't be able to join this morning, but failed. Zem says, hi James, do you have any advice on how to watch a game on TV? more analytically, what should I be focusing on, spot tactics, etc.? That's a good question. When observing football, there's no rights and wrongs, and um, I wouldn't necessarily go down that rabbit hole if it's not something that's normal. Purely in the sense you start watching players more than the ball quite often, which the shitter the game, the easier it is to do. Like Tottenham and Manchester United on Saturday. I would say first and foremost, you're looking for rotations. Those can be both defensive and offensive. So it's being aware of someone popping up in a position that looks slightly unusual. So, for example, on Talking Tactics later today, you'll see I talk about a rotation between Paulinho and Pedro Porro, both in and out of possession for Tottenham on Saturday, which was, I think, probably a last-minute switch to potentially deal with Mbeumo playing on the left-hand side, which would have been unexpected, which I think United had probably targeted, as Alex said on COTC, to get Mbeumo at Porro. And Paulinho really shunted that side. So it's spotting occurrences that feel unusual. Like, okay, Paulinho's dropping into the right-sided centre-back position. Okay, we've not seen too much from Tottenham from that this season. So it's being aware, first and foremost, of, I think, pre-game expectations and spotting things that therefore then look different. The easiest thing at the moment is also to look at structures off the ball, because you're liable to get more static positioning is what I would say. That Paulinho Porro example is I don't want to say unusual one, but is easier to spot because it's unusual for Tottenham. When I mean by like static positioning defensively, doesn't mean people just stand still, but so many teams are in like a 4-4-2 shape without the ball. And then you're looking for pressing triggers, potentially. There is so much within the league at the moment with teams being aggressive, pressing in against the team's defensive third, then very much going kind of mid-block as teams approach towards the halfway line, and then defending in numbers around about the penalty area once teams get into the final third. And so many teams are playing with that defensive pattern at the moment. But I think the simplistic thing in the first instance is have a visualization of a game before it starts. You see a team line up. Oh, that doesn't fit right. For example, let's say Danso comes in for Simmons for Tottenham at Arsenal. You're probably trained in your mind already to think, right, okay, I know Kevin Danso is going to play right-sided centre-back for Tottenham. It's going to be a back 3/back 5. Know that. Now, then if you see it and it's like, hang on a minute, Romero's alongside Bentancur. You're like, Romero's pushed into midfield. So that would be something that would be like quite shocking, right? And look different. There isn't rights and wrongs, mate. I think most of it comes down to positional structures, ultimately. But most people will want to watch football matches and follow the ball. I give a real example of something that annoyed me on Sunday. I watched Palace Brighton. As I said, I was around my dad's and that was the game we wanted to watch. It was fine. I quite enjoyed it. And I took my eye off the tactical lens on the game because I know what I get from Palace every fucking week. And I've seen enough of Brighton this season. I looked at them back, obviously, against Newcastle, I covered on Talking Tactics last week. I've seen us play them. I've seen enough of Brighton to have an understanding of what they are as well. And I took my eyes off the tactics of the game completely and just watched it. And it wasn't till late in the second half I realised there was something that I really should be looking at, was that Canvo covered for Gay in the second half. And I hadn't looked... it covered in the game, but I didn't think about it till the second half. And didn't consider anything in terms of if it was different for Palace in terms of build-up, how they were using him. I didn't focus on it at all. And it annoyed me. And when I saw the team, that should have been like the number one thing for me. What's the impact of this? I haven't seen this footballer play. And I watched the game afterwards and was like, well, he was all right. I hadn't focused on it. So that annoyed me. So I think if you can have an idea of expectations before a game starts and then look for things that feel different, I would say at the moment, the understanding of how teams are pressing is really important at the moment. And where are so many teams trying to find their 12th man that I speak about so much? So be that moving fullback into inverted, or what Tottenham have done quite a lot recently, which is move left winger into left half space, move Simmons into right space, push up left back. if you know these sort of things are practice, and then you watch the game, so say, right, this is what Tottenham have been doing recently, and then you watch us at Arsenal, and it's like, they're not doing that. Okay, they're deciding to be structurally more stationary because the quality of the opponent is exceptional. Maybe. Aren't rights and wrongs, mate. Aren't rights and wrongs. JB says, I still hold wildcard. No other chips. Have front three of Thiago, Mateta, and Haaland. Is 13, 14 still likely right time to wildcard? Do I hold it and use it if a major injury occurs? So that's the front three that I will want. What's the rest of the team look like? Relevant. So if you decide to wildcard, JBL, and you think that's the best three, like, don't change anything. My wildcard needs to change it. And ultimately, I've been here before where I remember I'd plotted to wildcard. It was 1 year I wildcarded on Boxing Day. And I can't remember the reasons why, but I felt in pre-season that it was the right strategy. And when I got there, obviously, inevitably, I wildcarded because there's nowhere else to bloody use it. But I do recall saying to Serge, I didn't need this, Like, I'd set up and carried all right, that it was using the wild card for the sake of using it. And if I didn't have it, moving forward wasn't a problem. Now, that's how it panned out. And obviously, I had a philosophy of how I wanted to play it strategy-wise heading into August. Stuck to the strategy. The strategy along the path worked fine, but then I didn't really need it. And it's kind of almost similar now. So if you don't want to use it now, don't use it, mate. I don't know what other, obviously, 12 players you've got. I really think at the moment, my ideology will be to take a few punts, possibly in the midfield area. But within that, it's probably going to be very template of Semenyo, Bumo, plus 2 probably rogue ones. And the rest of the team's going to be structured pretty solid, so I can just piss about with a couple of the attacking positions heading into the AFCON transfers and then through Christmas, and leave the defence where possible. I also want to set it so I can move that structure. So if I go to 5.0s, I can move that back to a 4.0 and a 6 once I feel more comfortable, perhaps going into 2026. But yeah, it's okay to have had a strategy, feel okay about the strategy, and then realize you didn't need it in quite the same way. Let's be honest. If right now we were looking at the game and it's like, oh my God, even if it was just Isak is incredible at the moment, suddenly he'd come on to Etihad, he scored twice, and was like, oh my God, Isak's arrived. That alone would make you want to piss about with your structure of your team, with the fixtures Liverpool got coming up. It hasn't appealed. For those who watched the midweek dilemma when I did it early in the season, I talked a lot about the idea of going Isak from now. I remember having a discussion with Oni and a few other patrons on a Zoom call, and he asked me for a couple of predictions. I'll admit one was terribly bad, which was Sunderland wouldn't win again in 2025 following their game against Wolves. Incorrect. They looked decent. The other prediction I said to him was, he'd asked me who I thought would be second highest goal scorer in the league this season. And I said Isak. And I also said at that point, and this was about game week 8, and I said Isak, but he won't score till game week 12. Can't go there at the moment, though. They at least needed him to be fit to be able to kind of take that sort of punt. You'd want an ideal scenario where we'd have got to this point in pre-season thinking about now and going, right, if I wildcard around about this period, I want to go something like Frimpong in preparation for Salah disappearing. Salah probably, or a cheaper alternative, and Isak, or Isak's better than Salah, whatever. City, like, yeah, I want to go like Vardiol, Foden maybe, or Marmoush. Marmoush is one name I regularly mention. It's like, it's not on the table. Haaland, but obviously. Newcastle, yeah, Voltamario, Vissa's going to be great, and Anthony Gordon, and like Lewis Hall maybe at the back. United, maybe there'll be a defensive one. Probably Dorgu would have been the sort of one in mind in pre-season. It's like, it's not there. Maybe Sesko would have settled better, or whoever they buy up front, which we didn't. I think Sesko had signed before game week 1, hadn't he? But he was like, oh, that could be one. Like, from those teams, nothing's like stamping its mark to the point that we're now talking about players like Doku and Szoboszlai, and last night I'm talking about Harvey Barnes if Anthony Gordon's out for a while. Like, it's all punty shite, isn't it? So it's okay to have landed here. Not necessarily think that the structure's wrong, but it's just not landed in the right way. Use it. Even if you only end up making 3 or 4 transfers in game week 19, use it, because there's something you'll be able to do with the team to make it better. Even if it's a case of like 16, got the 5 free transfers, right? Fine, wild card, set the team up for a few weeks, so you can just continue to keep making 1 transfers like every week and trying to keep kind of building up and storing to those 5 free transfers. So the answer's bigger than just the front 3. But again, as said for James previously, like if you don't want to use it at the moment, my friend, don't. Zem says, the second question, if I may, long time listener, but I've never understood the cue music please manchild at the end of each pod. Please could you explain the backstory? Also, happy birthday to Harry. Thank you, mate. One of the most answered questions in Planet FPL history. This and how did you and such, mate? Q Music Manchild is Manchild, that's Arjun, was the editor back in the day of Planet FPL when we started. And so I edit the audios now. Nico does all, obviously, the video work. When we started, it was just the audio. And Arjun, Mr. Manchild, used to do the editing on the audio. He trained me how to do it a few years later. So the Q Music Manchild was something I said on one of our podcasts during season 1, and it wasn't planned. And I was like, "Oh yeah, how do we end this?" Do you know what I mean? Oh, Q Music, please, Manchild. And that works. Yeah, sure, why not? And that was the literal, wasn't it? If you think about it from Manchild's perspective, it was me saying, right, you can cut the fucking music back in now, mate. So he knew exactly that was it, right? Cue music, please, Manchild. We didn't have to say to Manchild, oh, after we say this is when you should put the outro music back in. It's like, cue music, please, Manchild. You know, I don't even have to tell you. Just find that. So that's how it started. The reasons for Manchild is Manchild was once working on something with Fat Man Scoop, rest his soul. And Fat Man Scoop, this is legitimately true, said to someone, who is this Manchild? In reference to Arjun. And so he's forever had the nickname of Manchild. He's also a fucking child in a man's body, so it helps. Ian Parins in says, morning, James. Hope all is well. Which channel currently does football coverage best? And what would be your all-time favourite setup, assuming a presenter, 2 studio pundits, commentator, and co-coms? Oof. Oh, yikes. That's a struggle. Yeah. Presentation wise, it's probably still Sky, but they've got the most experience in doing it 4 or 5 games a week every week for the last 15 years or so, and obviously been covering the Premier League now for over 30. Probably is still Sky. Like I could say, oh, it's CBS. I don't watch CBS. I see the clips and think that's cool, but I don't know like what it looks like from start to finish and stuff. So probably Sky. Ultimately though, and I don't watch much of the analysis after games particularly, or before games, or even at halftime. It's only if certain people are available I'm more inclined to want to get their take, but that's not often. Okay, let's start with a host. I'm drawn to say something like Des Lynam. Possibly because that's what him, Jimmy Hill, I don't think you are influenced by your first ones. Like, it's easy to remember. You'll probably be the same, Ian. It's like easier to remember what happened in the 90s than it is like a month ago. It's just how the brain works. And I think those you see in the positions first. I think Gary Lineker, actually, considering he was a footballer, actually made a very good job of presenting. I'll go with Des, I think. 2 studio pundits. I will go for Thierry Henry Um, bar his one weird analysis of a goal that Manchester United conceded last year, I think he brings um, top level, and he was a top player, top level experience and insight in terms of the breach of being close enough where he was a player, also understanding everything in terms of what's modern and tactics, and also insights to little things which are brilliant in terms of the runs that like a forward might make or the way they finish. So I would say, even though he played for the enemy, I actually think Henry's the best. I just think that having someone like Alan Hansen with him would have been absolutely terrific. You need something to bounce off that's completely different. I think Carragher most of the time is good. I think some of his stuff on MNF is really good. I can't help but feel a lot of the time when I watch MNF that it's fed to him a lot. But actually, I know how Gary Neville really divides now. I think both of them have done much better in the position than people thought that they would. And I think they've changed the way football analysis on TV has been done quite a bit. Henry and Carragher get on well on CBS as well, don't they? In fact, you could have that trio with Michael Richards. It's a good combination of guests in terms of in the studio. Commentator co-coms. I'm still drawn to Martin Tyler, and I think like he probably stayed at Sky maybe a bit too long, but that's the voice that I've heard the most. So I'm going to say Martin Tyler. Co-coms. Again, I know like really disrespected now, but Andy Gray changed the way that was done in terms of how co-commentary should be done. And I think that part of his job very much needs respecting. Co-coms though, I want someone that can bring me something that can see something that maybe I can't. And actually, I do think that still is most likely to be Carragher or Neville. So I'd go Carragher, I think, of the two at the moment. But it doesn't feel like a great pull, is it? Ultimately, and the most important thing is what you're watching, isn't it, and what you're hearing. James Johnson says, yes, mate, I hope you and the fam are well. Wildcard in 13, 2 free transfers this week. Bit rogue, but what about Haaland and Foden to Salah and Watkins for just 1 week? It's fine. There's the consequence of the value, James. So, because I thought about this, the idea of, well, if I do think Salah's the best captaincy this week, should I force him in? And I want to say I bought Haaland at 14.2, I think. It's 14.9 now. Not going to slow down with the fixtures coming next. So that's going to 15. So if I sold him now, I'm getting 14.5 and I'm buying him back at 15. The value of that 0.5 across something more than one game week is too much. Too much. It's not like I'm bidding him and I know he's going. So say like a Boomo, people will be up at Boomo at 8, right? He goes to AFCON. You're obviously selling, he's going to AFCON, right? You're not thinking about the value. If it's like selling Haaland for 1 week, no. Now, if you've been on Haaland at 14.8, I'd strongly consider that, James. But I think if you've had Haaland from anything that constitutes kind of a value representation, it's not worth it, mate. I don't think. Rishi Lakani says, how attacking is Saliba from set pieces, and is he less of a rotation risk and potentially a better FPL asset over the festive period than the fullbacks? He might be, yes. In terms of security of minutes, better. It feels like a question that's looking for me to say, yes, he is, because you're scared of the fullbacks and their rotation, which there will be some. Like I think Ben White may well play against Brentford, but as Adam Pritchard mentioned, it's all Brentford and the long throws. Actually, maybe he's going to want Timber and Calafiori. Could well be that way. So it might not be that it's not till, say, Wolves in 16 where it becomes an issue. So, no, I don't think there's enough reason to pick Saliba over the fullbacks. What I would add is I do feel like we've had phases with Arsenal where Gabriel has become such an obvious target that they started using Saliba more as a target and almost using Gabriel as a diversion because everybody was preparing how best to stop Gabriel. So started changing things up. I want to say there was a period last year, actually around about this time of year, where they drew at Fulham and he scored or he assisted, I think. And there was a 3 or 4 week spell where it was like suddenly it seemed to be Saliba was on the end of everything. And I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of thing happened again. But there is no suggestion of it at the moment. There would truthfully be, other than for a little bit of fear, no reason to pick Saliba over Timber at this moment. Zem says, since you're low on questions, following on from my previous question, what's the story behind the intro music? Never quite understood what the Messi goal commentary has to do with an FPL pod. Nothing, mate, but he's the greatest footballer of all time, in my opinion, and Suj's. You'd have to ask Suj. Suj came up with it. Suj actually edited that intro himself. It's all Suj's work when we started. So it's all on Suj. I don't know if that was in thinking that it might not always be a fantasy football podcast. I don't know. But it's who we are now, isn't it? I don't ever want to... We have had discussions about changing it, and I've very much been put down. No, you're not doing it. And also, when we had discussions, there was little rumours about... Has it been since? I suppose there was talk of Messi going to Man City for a little while. I was like, can you imagine? So, do you know what? Does it correlate? No. But also, does a lot of what we say correlate? No. Rishi says, what are some of the best midfielder punts over the next 5-7 game weeks? Doesn't have to necessarily be buying this week. We've got a fair few transfers. Players, I'm not going to give you any surprises here, mate. That's scraping the barrel looking at people like Tavernier and Gomez and Iwobi, and it's not going to be any players I ain't already mentioned, buddy. Michael Radley says, hi, mate. Was planning to finally get double Arsenal defence this week and go Keane to Timber, but now I'm thinking to take on the Arsenal double defence and go Verge. What would be your preference? At this moment in time, I'd go Verge, yeah. Yeah, attack a fixture. And I do think that they do have a wonderful run of fixtures. He's essentially the only asset that we can rely upon at the moment. His DEFCONs have been better than expected, and that's partly because teams are going so direct against Liverpool. Man City obviously not going to be one of those teams. A lot of the opponents have got coming up can be. He's just had a goal disallowed from a set play. We know he's their biggest threat from set plays, although it hasn't really converted into kind of XG opportunities much in the Premier League this season. That last week obviously doesn't show on the stats. We should bear that in mind. It's like, and if it's good though, the ceiling is high. The ceiling is high. I'd almost be surprised if at some point in December, if Virgil van Dijk didn't rock up a 15-pointer in there somewhere. You get two of them, the little bits of crap that come with it will be worth it. And ultimately, the fixtures are brilliant. If they sort themselves out, he could well be rocking out at an average of sort of over 6-7 over December, I think. So, yeah, I would go Van Dijk, mate. Michael says, it's been 15 years since that exciting Spurs team went to the Emirates and got a win. How highly do you rate that Spurs team under Harry compared to others over the Prem era? Yeah, I'm holding on to that when we won at Arsenal, that was November 15 years ago in the league. We certainly won't be coming back from 2-0 down this time. The offensive players were brilliant. It's almost the opposite to now. I mean, if I could have put Van der Ven and Romero in that team, we might have achieved something more. Bearing in mind, Ledley couldn't keep himself fit. Gallus and Cabal played centre-back that day. Alan Hutton played right-back. Ben Wasuakoto left-back. I mean, it's the now is better. In front of that, it was way more offensive in terms of the players in midfield. Genus, Modric were my top-end players rather than ball-winning specialists. Bale and Lennon on the flanks, Crouch, Defoe, Pavlyuchenko, whatever you want to use up front, Van der Vaart in between all of it. Again, if you put the attacking players we had then into this team, guess same thing. Like, it would be good. The collection of quality of players that came together, it did play some brilliant football. It really did. I remember playing a game against Everton in that season in January, and it was the first time ever in the 22 years I'd been going, basically, I'd ever sat back in the stadium at White Hart Lane and gone, fucking hell, we're a really good team. All of it. Defensively, offensively, everything. We won 2-0. It wasn't like a spectacular. It was like, this opposition has got absolutely no chance. And they weren't a terrible team at the time, Everton. They've got no chance. And played professionally with brilliant top-end ability. I mean, put Modric and Bale in the same team. Bloody hell. You're arguably talking about two of the best players of this century in football. I think that's a legit claim. And they played for my team at the same time with other good players. So, yeah, they were a very, very good team. If they'd have had someone in charge that was more astute tactically, they would have done better. But at the same time, Harry did give them free rein to express themselves. So when they played well, it was really good fun. And it's a shame we didn't have like overlap things. Like, we bought Dembele when Modric left. In the same way we bought Lineker in 89 when Waddle left. If we'd have managed to get Luka Modric and Moussa Dembele as a functioning midfield, and you imagine you keep ahead of that, the likes of Bale, and add to it, Kane was going to come through a few years later. Like, yeah, if Ledley could have ever stayed fit, if Ledley had played with Jan and Toby, and we'd have had proper good fullbacks like we did later with Carl Walker and Danny Rose. Yeah, you've just been on the. We've always had good teams, but there's always been functionalities of it not quite right. And it was the astuteness of the manager at the time, and they weren't good enough defensively unless Ledley played. Rishi says, do you think Thiago's returns are sustainable? Have been slightly spooked by the comment on yesterday's COTC that he didn't play well against Newcastle and was fortunate to get the points he did. Does it matter, Rishi? He's scored a penalty and he's ended up with a 1v1. Brentford are playing into his strengths. There are players, and I like what I've seen of him so far, but I mentioned it again last night, that Solomon Rondon comment. Also, Sai's bitter because his team lost. Sai is often can be like that. Love you, pal. It doesn't matter. Players can be really good in FPL even if you think they're shit. Remember when Nick Pope first got in the Burnley team? No one rated it. But it was like, oh, a lot of fucking points though, isn't he? Like, for a goalkeeper. Like, yeah, actually, yeah. Even if I don't want him in the England squad. Yeah, but it's best goalkeeper in FPL at the moment. Yeah, right, stick him in. You don't have to think much of a player for them to be a really, really good FPL asset. Similarly, you can love a player like Doku. I've always loved Doku. He frightens the life out of me. Never fancied him as a fantasy asset. So I definitely would not be spooked by what Sai said last night, mate. Take more notice of what Tom Med says on COTC next week. I think with the caution, you know what Tom's like. He's really positive, right? Next up is Michael says, if you were granted... No, I've missed some, sorry. No, I haven't. Rishi says, what do you think some of the best triple captaincy opportunities are? Haaland in 13, Haaland in 15, Haaland in 17. Next, Michael Radley says, if you were granted just one of the following two wishes, which would you pick? England 2026 World Cup winners or Spurs 2025-26 Premier League champions? Michael, you really don't know me well enough, mate. I'd rather have the League Cup than England win the World Cup, mate. I've covered this so many times over, mate. In fact, I would rather just win at Arsenal next week than England win the World Cup. And I will desperately want England to win the World Cup next week. But there are massive levels to how I feel about the two. So, yeah, honestly, I would rather win at Arsenal next week than England won the World Cup. James says, Canate and VVD double up. No. Canate will get the odd DEFCON. He's not worth it. Minutes stable, but he's so erratic. Would it be a huge surprise if Joe Gomez comes and nicks his place? Ultimately, let's break this down. Is Canate a better FPL asset than Marcus Senesi? Similar price. If the answer is Canate, I don't understand. Is Canate a better FPL asset than Maxence Lacroix or Mark Gay at the same price? If the answer is Canate, I don't understand. So, Will for Liverpool, double defensive. That's very against the grain at the moment. I don't hate the theory idea of it. But ultimately, once I inspect on that more, I don't think Canate is better than two of the other players that I've just mentioned. So, a no from me, buddy. Rishi says, if Petrovic is your goalkeeper on wildcard, would you consider selling him after game week 16 when fixtures turn? And I have him and Senesi. Bought Senesi at 4.7. Would you sell one of them, and which one, if so? So, it's probably going to be Petrovic or Sanchez, I think, probably for me on wildcard. The biggest reluctance with Sanchez, like wildcarding into him playing Arsenal. Okay. Don't piss about the goalkeepers, mate. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Yeah, it'll be a tougher run. Guess what? That means it'll be an easier run somewhere else. You're probably not wildcarding again until you're into sort of like game week 31, 32 region. So it's a goalkeeper for last, mate. Don't piss about with the goalkeepers. So by default, if you wanted to move one on, it's Senesi. But these fixtures that you speak of that are bad, 17, they've got Burnley at home. 18, they've got Brentford away. Then there's two bad fixtures. Then it's fine again. How bad is it? So you're talking about selling in, like, when? 16. So they're three fixtures from game week 16 are United away, Burnley at home, Brentford away. What are we particularly selling for? Brilliant record at Old Trafford last couple of years. I want to say they've won their last 3 years. From game week 16 for the following 3 weeks, I've got Bournemouth 5th on my rolling 3-week ticker. What we selling for? Not convinced about that personally, buddy. Rishi says, thoughts on Cunha as an FPL asset? Very interested. And I think a lot of other people will be as well. But they'll be interested when Bumo goes. I think he'll be extremely popular over the Christmas period, even if he doesn't do well between now and then, because we're all very aware of what the capability of the player is. So, yeah, Bumo to Cunha. When Bumo goes to AFCON, I think will be a very, very popular move. I would flirt with the idea of going both. I think Bumo's worth the extra at the moment. I would flirt with the idea of both, but the combination of Cunha and my other punt doesn't probably quite work from a financial perspective for me. He's a little too much than what I want to be paying at the moment. Now, if it was in a scenario where I could get Cunha in, it didn't impact anything else, genuinely I would strongly consider putting him in. But he was very quiet at the weekend. Very. Andrew Parker says, hi James, hope you're doing well. With the Xmas fixture schedule and considering DEFCON, will we see a lot of FPL teams go to a back five, and do you think that's the way to go to avoid rotation, etc.? If you pick a backline at the moment that is something like Gabriel, Van der Ven, Virgil van Dijk, Senesi, Lacroix, clearly you ain't going to suffer much from rotation. I am beginning to think along those lines, but not doing it in the sense of thinking I'm going to play a back five every week. Because ultimately there will be unavoidable moments where Lacroix's playing Haaland in 16. Oh, shit. Oh, and Senesi's playing Manchester United away that same week as well. And you think, I don't really want to look at a back five that week. So I think the balance is finding something that can be, but that doesn't have to be. And that's what I'm trying to look at the moment. But technically, the way the game is at the moment, yeah, in theory, a back five is probably right. But what do I always say? The structure of the game and the template will move. And it's only going to need players like Cunha, Anthony Gordon, Marmoush suddenly start going off. I want to get these guys in my team. Oh shit! I've only got midfielders at like 6.5 and boom over. What am I going to do? At some point, that sort of thing will probably happen. Rishi says, "Do you think Palace's fixture pile-up would lead to a drop in performance over the December period?" No, not particularly. When I look at the fixtures for the rest of the year, I think that's pretty reasonable. There are some challenging home games there. Yeah, United, City, Tottenham are not gimmies. Away games though, Wolves, Burnley, Fulham, Leeds, pretty good. Pretty good. So no major concerns on Palace. My concern with them is that if they keep picking the same team over and over again, eventually you're liable to get a few injuries. But Oliver Glasner seems to be managing it okay at the moment in terms of they've not had too many issues. So I think there's been a suggestion that they're not training much at the moment. They're so well drilled in how he wants them to play. It's not as necessary for him as it is for other teams. They might get away with it. That's my only concern. In terms of drop-off of performance, no, not especially. If you think about it from Palace's perspective, you can say, oh, shit, they're playing weekend, midweek, weekend, midweek. Yeah, but Palace have been doing that all season anyway. And actually, some of the teams that they'll play, such as Fulham at home in 19, well, now Fulham have got a difficult schedule over Christmas as a consequence where they're playing weekend, midweek, and haven't had to do that for the majority of the season. So in a weird way, it should almost like cope better for teams that are in Europe because they're used to the weekend, midweek schedule, and that's what Christmas is, right? It's a weekend schedule, game week 18, midweek 19, weekend 20, midweek 21, right? That's what the schedule is. For the European teams, just 2 fucking normal weeks, right? For the teams that don't normally play in Europe, you guy, I never changed my team. No, Fulham's. I don't change my team much. You pick the same team for 4 games. Fulham's possibly a bad example. Everton may be another one. They rotate more over that period. So it's actually almost a little bit more concern in terms of the management of it for the teams that are not used to playing midweek and weekend. Rishi says, on free hit, would you go for Defcon or attacking defenders, Egg, Truffer versus Senesi? I don't think that's a great example because Senesi can be a threat from set plays and stuff anyway, so I don't think there's enough upside on Truffer personally. But on a free hit, no, I'm going for my guys offensively. Absolutely. I picked Trevor Chalobah in game week 2 because of a weakness on West Ham set pieces and thinking there was a chance he could score. Did. Now that doesn't normally pay, by the way, but that's what I would be doing on a free hit. I'm not looking for consistency on a free hit. I'm looking for the biggest score that I can get, the biggest monster I can find. I'm looking at defenders and free hits and thinking, can you get me 15 points? Senesi might get you 17. Next up is Cole says, hi James, any memories of playing football as a kid? I'm pushing 50 and kids football is 11 aside on a full pitch. My teenage son has benefited a lot from smaller size games at young ages. Probably best experience football playing, I think. Can't beat that, playing and winning. Absolutely adored my kind of period, sort of 11 to 14 playing Sunday League football. Absolutely loved it. Loved the position I played, loved the role in the team that I had, the role within the group. Parents come and watch me every week. Loved it. Genuine, brilliant experience. I think you were asking a question in terms of more the experience of now playing smaller sided games and stuff like that, and that's right for the development of players. But we didn't have that kind of mindset back then, right? So, yeah, brilliant memories, mate. Rishi says, if you haven't owned Semenyo the entire season, part of why my rank is 4.7 million, would you buy him? Yes. Yeah, I would. Again, comparables in that value. Would you maybe go Boomer over him at the moment? Yeah, possibly. Going Cunha over him? Don't think so. No, for me, if I was wildcarding this week, it'd definitely go in. So that's like a whether I had the value or didn't have the value. If I was wildcarding this week, it would definitely be going in. So I don't think it particularly matters. Rishi says, are you surprised the Arsenal Palace fixtures got moved as they were selected for TV? And do you think it was the right thing or not because fans lose out? The schedule is boxed into a corner. Now we've got a better understanding of what might happen should this occurrence happens next year. One of the arguments I certainly made was that I didn't think that the two games would move from the Sunday because you'd already have Palace and Arsenal fans, and also some obviously from Everton, Leeds as well, would have already booked their travel and accommodations required for the game on the Sunday. And I know that if it had been me and Tottenham had been in a scenario where, I can't use the example here, let me use it the other way around. Let's say Everton were the Conference League team and Tottenham were playing away to Everton on that Sunday in the way Arsenal were, I'd have booked my travel. I'd have booked my travel for the Sunday, yeah. Because I'd have thought they won't piss about with the Premier League game. Now, there might have been a little bit of me that thought, well, a few people in the community have mentioned this idea of the cup ties maybe taking place that weekend. Do you wait? Okay, I'd have had a better awareness than most. Could I wait? Maybe. When the cup tie got announced for the Tuesday, I definitely would have proceeded. I generally would have thought, no, well, that's it. They've found the fairest solution here. Palace and Arsenal obviously put their requests in. The majority, 98% of fans who support Crystal Palace and Arsenal will probably be really pleased that game's moved to 8 o'clock on a Sunday. But the 3,000 fans from each group that are going to travel have been absolutely shafted. Quite what that means if people have but I suppose if they've booked a hotel for the Saturday night, probably doesn't matter so much. But the chances are 2 o'clock on a Sunday, it's probably just train there, train back on the day. You ain't getting shit back with them trains. You ain't getting shit. So I'll pay more for a flexi ticket. That costs a fucking enough, trust me. So look, it's ultimately a small percentage that are probably bothered by it. As it was what Crystal Palace and Arsenal both wanted, which includes Palace obviously playing 2 days after their game in the Conference League. That's the way Palace kind of wanted it best. Right solutions. I accept it. Rishi says, is Sky able to pick a Saturday 8 p.m. fixture each game week, should they wish to? Or is it dependent on the number of Monday and Friday fixtures they choose? It's not every week, no. Ian, who was in the chat earlier, it's a good question for him. He'd be able to answer it better than me. But I think the Saturday night 8 p.m. games, I want to say, are bundled in with the Friday, Monday night games. And there's a select amount you can have. It's definitely, they can't pick an 8 o'clock game every week. No. If they could, they would. let me say that way. And I think it's been used as a space, as a contingency quite a lot. So we had Liverpool-Brentford moved from the 12:30 to the 8 o'clock because of European commitments. Tottenham-Wolves moved from a 2 o'clock on the Sunday to 8 o'clock on the Saturday because of European commitments. So it's worked out as almost like a contingency as well. There are others such as Liverpool-Villa, and obviously these two involving Arsenal and Palace now that have been put in the 8 o'clock slot. But no, they cannot pick one every single week. But they probably could get away with it probably 3/4 of the time if they wanted. So Chase Brandon says, hi James, hope you're well. On free hit 12, any alternative Bournemouth attacking options to Semenyo this week? I wouldn't go over Nilsson. I think Tavernier would be the one that's most assured. Brooks and Clivert could be a bit of a coin flip. Tavernier probably plays. Would I bother? Probably not. If you're trying to force Salah and Haaland in together, it's the sort of one that maybe appeals a little bit more. Addy says, would you still go 3 strikers on free hit 12? Yes, probably. Mateta would be one. I wouldn't go Haaland if I was on free hit. I'd take it a lot on. It will just open up better quality of like United midfielders. So like put Bumo Cunha and then put Semenyo and put that all in with Salah, for example. So once I say that out loud, yeah, possibly makes you want to think elsewhere. But I think I'm looking at others. Brighton midfielders, meh. Fulham midfielders, meh. No, I think I'd still be front three would be something like Mateta, Welbeck. I don't even mind going Thiago from that fixture. Evan Nilsson his record at home against the poorest teams is really bad, you know. He's only scored 3 goals at home. I think probably be Ekateke. Force that in, I think. If you take Haaland out, you could probably force in a team. I'll look at it next Friday. Something like Salah, Bumo, Cunha, Semenyo, and then Welbeck, Mateta, and whoever else I just said that I can't bloody remember now. No, Ekateke. You probably just about force it in, I think. Next up is Milan. Mate says, "Hi, mate. Who would you say is the most famous Premier League player right now? Who's the most famous? Wow. What a question. It's got to be Haaland, really, isn't it? I think so. I think that's probably right. Addy says, "Who is your favourite Spurs goalkeeper of all time?" For me, so I can only date back to the 90s. My dad would tell you like Pat Jennings. For me, it's very easy. It's Hugo Lloris. Straightforward, mate. And I think Milan's got the last one here. It says, "Who are your favourite 3 athletes of all time who are not footballers?" I'll tell you what I watched last night. It's not the answer to the question. I actually watched something on television when I got home last night because it started as I walked in the door. It was a program about the Eubanks, Chris Eubank and Chris Eubank Jr. On BBC, which was quite a nice watch actually. He comes across quite well, Chris Eubank Jr. Favorite athletes who not footballers. But I don't have anything that I follow enough to give a shit about. Okay, I'll give you one. I'll give you 3, but these are shit names. Let's go for Jason Robinson of England Rugby Union. But I used to watch him back in the day. Me and Dad used to, believe it or not. We used to watch a lot of rugby league back in the 90s because that was what was on Sky Sports on a Friday night. When Sky started, it wasn't Championship football or Premier League football. Friday night was rugby league. And at the time, Wigan had a brilliant team. Like St Martin O'Fire, Jason Robinson. I think Jason Robinson, because he then went on to change code and then play for the England Rugby Union World Cup winning team as well. I'm pretty sure he's going to try in the final. I'm going to say Jason Robinson as quite a good shout. Golf. I mean, it's easy to say people like golf, Tiger Woods, or snooker, Ronnie O'Sullivan. I don't have any kind of like affinity with them to like particularly want them to win. I suppose Ronnie a little bit in terms of snooker and the fact I used to play quite a lot. So yeah, bollocks. I'll say Ronnie O'Sullivan. I think other sports won't let me have wrestling. Will you? It's bloody entertainment. Sports. I'd say probably best sporting thing I've ever seen. I think. That wasn't football, where I didn't really kind of love like a horse to back, if you will, didn't really care. 2008 Wimbledon final, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer was mad. And we was in a pub all day. I was all watching it all day. What a match. So I'm kind of tempted to say one of them two. And I think Nadal won that. I want to say it might have been the first time he'd beat Federer on grass, or maybe in a grass final or something. Or it might have been the first time he'd won Wimbledon. I can't remember. I'm going to say Nadal maybe. But yeah, I've not got enough other sports going on, mate. Milan saying, I would say Salah because the Middle East region probably. Oh, in terms of most popular player, yeah, very fair shout as well. Yeah, yeah, you may well be right. Alfie says, morning, James. Pateta v Boom over next 5. Cheers, mate. I saw your message on social. Next Ask James. I was thinking, join it, mate. Join it. Pateta v Boomo, next 5. I'm going to say Mateta, I think. Close. I just about edged for Mateta over the 5 because of consistency. Not that Boomo doesn't have it. I remember those away games for Palace are pretty good. Whereas United's Palace, Wolves, Villa, they've both got Wolves, Palace, Villa's a bit. We also don't know at this moment if Boomo's going to play that 5th game. So we think there's a chance, but that 5th game in 17 is 3 days before Cameroon's first game. United have requested that Boomo stays and plays it. But with that in mind, I think my answer's probably got to be Mateta, mate. But it is close. You're absolutely right. Thanks, guys. Thank you for all of you who contributed in the chat. And those who put several questions in, I don't mind. I really appreciate it. And apologies again to those who submitted questions last night. Honestly, I'm raging about it. But thank you all as always, guys. Thank you for keeping the lights on and supporting the show. It's truly, truly appreciated. FanView will go out in a couple of hours for you with Paul, Sam and Matt, which I think is a really interesting chat, by the way. It's not just a catch up with the 3 relegated teams from last year. We dive in a bit deeper into the idea of, do you even want to get promoted again? And some of the psychology behind that. A little bit of discussion about how well Coventry are doing as well. Looking at kind of concern about the model that's obviously worked for Sunderland. And they've done it well. But has it got to be like 150 million to like stay up now? Is this what we're talking about? Do we talk about those sort of things, which I think are really interesting as well, and talking tactics for the advanced and intermediate plus tier patron as well. I think we'll like it's about 35 minutes on Tottenham and Manchester United structures in that game at the weekend and the difficulty that both teams had in terms of hurting the other, and explain some of the reasons behind that. That'll be available for you probably 5-ish or so today as well. But thank you guys. Always a pleasure. Weekend tomorrow, and me and David have got the Euros challenge. Will be similar to the one we did in the World Cup during the last interlude as well. Have a great day, everyone. For the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please, man child.